Yo, what's up? Thanks for joining us. Welcome to Common Censored, which is when I have the amazing Eleanor Goldfield join me. How you doing?
Hello.
How you doing? We're already knocking it out of the park. All right, folks. So thanks for being here. We're going to get into the French protests, mass protests across France. We're going to get into so many of these Supreme Court fucking awful decisions, which is what they do now. That's just who they are.
I mean,
you know, it's good for
have.
them to embrace their truth.
Yeah, no, the Supreme Court has never been at the cutting edge of justice.
But yeah, everybody hit subscribe, hit thumbs up, do all those good things, and we'll start off in France. Boy, that sounds like it'd be kind of fun.
I know. I wish.
We'll start off in France, where it says more than 600 arrests. I also read it was like 873 arrests across France. It started by the murder of a 17-year-old by police. Protesters erected barricades, lit fires, shot fireworks at police in French streets overnight as tensions grew over the deadly police shooting of a 17-year-old that shocked the nation. More than 600 people were arrested. At least 200 police officers injured as the government struggled to restore order on a third night of unrest. And many people are calling for Russian peacekeepers to be sent in to help France get through this.
And you actually pointed this out earlier. The idea that the police murdering someone, yes, a 17-year-old, was he from Algeria or he was of Algerian descent?
They wrote Algerian descent, okay. So maybe parents or something.
The fact that the country was in shock over that says a lot about how often the French police kill someone. Now, I'm not saying that to be like, hey, aren't the French cops great? Because they're not, ACAB. But I think that also says a lot about the culture in terms of whether that's something that they've become accustomed to. Also, I really love the Onion headline that I saw the other day that I mean.
Well, I was fascinated by there were articles up that said, why are French police officers carrying guns at traffic stops? And I was like, yeah, they don't even ask that in the United States.
Can you imagine asking that?
In the U.S., they're just like, oh, yeah, of course, guys with guns run up in your car because you were going 5 miles per hour, which they didn't even follow you for an hour. They followed you for a few minutes, assuming you'd continue that rate for the hour. But, yeah, so we're just used to that. We're just used to that garbage.
So the Onion writes, French again protest in way Americans are welcome to at any time.
Yeah, good Onion headline,
which I love. Also,
you're welcome to try this, America. You're welcome to get on it.
I will say the summer after George Floyd's murder was not at that level, but it was the largest protest that I've seen, and in terms of protests that were large scale and I want to say militant, not necessarily in like a military garb, but militant in the sense that they were very strong. I remember there were shots over video shots of DC, and you could see like the fires that had been lit. And for the first time in the history of electricity, I believe, the White House turned off its outdoor lights that light the White House.
Like Trump went to like hide. He was like, turn the lights.
Which was also hilarious because it's like, oh shit, where'd the White House go? Like, we don't know where it is anymore. We're all just like standing right in front of it like, dude, you still see it. It's the only thing here.
Literally, I just picture Trump with the lights off, just like crawling around beneath the edge of the windows. So he's like,
they can't see us.
They don't know we're here. But turn your phone light down, you idiot. Yeah.
But anyway, so these French protests come on the heels of protests that have still, as far as I know, that were still ongoing because of the Macron policy change. So France has not taken a time out. And of course, these are about a different issue, but they're all connected, right? This is part of that, the police being the abusive arm of the state, and the state being Macron's policies and these neoliberal policies that oppress people. These things are all connected. And so it'll be very interesting to see how these play out, and solidarity to all of the folks in France, and of course, to those communities who directly knew, what was his name? I'm sorry.
Nahel, but I don't.
Nahel. To those folks who directly knew Nahel, of course, this is a horrific event.
Thank you, Michael, for the donation. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's a horrific event anytime this happens, but you're right that these things are connected, because people are far less likely to put up with a mistake like this. And I think it's a little closer to a mistake in France because it doesn't happen every day like it does in the US. But people are far less likely to put up with something like this, to put up with an egregious assault by their police, if they appreciate the society, like the governing of the society in which they live. Whereas recently Macron has forced through the increasing of the retirement age from 62 to 64, I think it was. Meanwhile, in the US, it's 67 if you're lucky enough to get that.
Well, and they're trying to push it to 69, and then it's like, but then again, who actually can retire? Because the benefits that you get via Social Security won't keep you alive anyway.
They don't keep up with the cost of living in this country. But yeah, it's like you said, neoliberal assault. It's being done in France. It's being done in the US. So many countries. It's just, let's exploit the citizens to the nth degree as far as we can. And then people are far less likely to put up with mistakes by the state if they feel the state is wronging them all the time.
Yeah. Vive la révolution.
Vive la révolution! All right, so we're going to move on to several of these Supreme Court decisions. One in particular we want to focus on. The Supreme Court is, as many of you know, it used to be a heap of garbage of old white men, and now it's a heap of garbage of old and young white and black people who get together to find new ways to serve the ruling elite and destroy our lives and destroy any form of progress that goes on in this nation. And of course, it's completely undemocratic, and they can sit there forever and fuck up people's lives forever, and they do. Yeah. So there's been a bunch of decisions that have come down. One of them was on affirmative action, basically saying affirmative action is now illegal, I guess.
So basically, the ruling, the ruling strikes down affirmative action at public and private universities, in this case specifically UNC and Harvard, UNC being public, Harvard being private. And I want to start by saying that, by basically pointing out what the ACLU pointed out, that this does not mean that people cannot use race in their entrance essays and things like that. And there will be a lot of people that are pushing for that and finding these loopholes. But
it also says that administrators are still allowed to use race when deciding who to spit at as they walk into the university. So luckily they still have that.
So quoting from ACLU, the court's ruling does not prohibit universities from considering an applicant's discussion of how race affected their life. So colleges can still consider race as long as they do so in this manner. However, if the student doesn't share that information in, say, an essay, then the school would have no idea, because they can't just say, like, if you're black, then this means that we will take this into consideration. They're not allowed to do that. Right. What this decision means.
It can't say on every application, what race are you, I guess.
So
for those of you who have sons or daughters or children who are applying for college, if you are a person of any color or background, make sure in the essay, just every third word should be black. Just, I would like to talk about today, that I do that. And then that might help.
And then when they find out that you're Pacific Islander, that'll be awkward, but you know. So I want to start off by sharing a quote that is so fucking dumb that it actually, like, I actually had a gag reflex when I read it. We'll see if that happens now when I read it out loud.
Are you going to say who it's from?
Yes, I'm going to say
Oh, okay.
Chief Justice John Roberts wrote for the majority and wrote, quote, "The student must be treated based on his or her experiences as an individual, not on the basis of race. Many universities have for too long done just the opposite, and in doing so, they have concluded wrongly that the touchstones of an individual's identity is not challenges bested, skills built, or lessons learned, but the color of their skin," end quote. What in the actual fuck are you talking about? Because if you little fucking penis wrinkle, if you were not white, do you honestly think that you would be sitting in the place that you're sitting in, being as annoying and stupid as you are? The idea that the experiences of an individual have nothing to do with race? What the fuck? Wow. Okay, so that's his understanding of what race means, which obviously brought him to the conclusion that affirmative action is unnecessary because it has nothing to do with your individual experiences in life.
And I don't want to jump the gun, so you can tell me to wait on this, but I want to talk about why affirmative action matters and is good. But wait, should I wait until we read some of the dissenting?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to share some of what Justice Jackson wrote, because she wrote, I recommend that folks read her dissenting opinion, because it's a very powerful essay. I don't know what we call it, but opinion, I guess. And I just want to share some of what she wrote. She also recused herself from this vote, by the way, because she went to Harvard and she served 6 years on their board. It wouldn't have mattered, though, because the vote was like 6-2. So even if she had voted, it wouldn't have mattered. She writes, "Our country has never been colorblind. Given the lengthy history of state-sponsored race-based preferences in America, to say that anyone is now victimized if a college considers whether that legacy of discrimination has unequally advantaged its applicants fails to acknowledge the well-documented intergenerational transmission of inequality that still plagues our citizenry." And she goes on to share, basically from the advent of Black folks, Africans on this land, from slavery till today. She goes through not an exhaustive history because that would be impossible. That would be a billion pages long. But she goes through some snippets of history that compound, right? This is cumulative. And for instance, she writes that the Supreme Court has been a part of ensuring that Black people stay down. For instance, she writes, in 1883, our predecessors, which on the court, the Supreme Court, invalidated Congress's attempt to enforce the Reconstruction Amendments via the Civil Rights Act of 1875, lecturing that, quote, "there must be some stage when Black Americans take the rank of a mere citizen and cease to be the special favorite of the laws," end quote. Imagine calling Black people in 1875 the favorite of laws. Wow.
Well, but that's exciting because that means we are now back to the young, youthful country we were before 1875. So there is a positive to this, that we have not aged. We're spry. We're young.
We're going back to the good old days.
And if we keep working towards it, we could get back to Stone Age levels.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I bet the U.S. was a better place in Stone Age.
So am I jumping the gun now if I talk about what she said about intergenerational, et cetera?
Go ahead.
So I don't, some of you probably have thought a lot about affirmative action. And some of you probably, it's been something that kind of was not really on your docket a lot, to use the Supreme Court terminology. But affirmative action was a tiny, tiny effort when you really look at the scope of things to deal with the incredibly racist system in which we live. It was not a solution. It didn't get rid of our systemic racism. It didn't get rid of the racism in the markets, of the racism in housing, of the racism in our policing, of the racism in our prisons, of the racism in our schooling, of the racism in so much across this country. It didn't erase that. It was a tiny Band-Aid on a gushing wound. I think the analogy I used earlier on Twitter was it was like throwing a rock at a tsunami of white privilege that is this country and has been for many years. And some areas have gotten better and some have not at all, a little better. And so it was throwing a rock at the tsunami, and now the Supreme Court is like, well, the rock is illegal. Throwing that rock is illegal because it could impact the tsunami. It could cause some sort of slight ripple in the tsunami of white privilege, the way our country is set up. The truth is, we have a system where we already have broad, massive affirmative action for white people. For white people. And yes, there's also a mass affirmative action by class, outside of race. Yes, the upper class has tons of privilege outside of race. But also within that, there is just crazy. And of course, the example I like to use, which I've used several times, because it is just so, it's just so clear cut, is they did a large study where they had people apply for jobs. They sent in the exact same, like thousands of the exact same application to various jobs. So the application was identical. The only difference, it didn't say the race on the application. It didn't say what the race was. The only difference was the name. And they sent it to thousands of jobs. And they found out that you are 50% less likely to get the first interview, not to get the job, to get the first interview if you have a black sounding name. 50% less likely across all types of industries, across all types of jobs with the exact same application, 50% less likely. And again, this doesn't have to do with your class. You could be poor, you could be wealthy. It's just a black sounding name, 50% less likely. That's systemic racism. And so it doesn't mean, saying that we have systemic racism does not mean that every problem in America comes down to race. It doesn't mean that poor people don't have it tougher in America. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that white people don't generally have the most of these various problems that we could discuss about because they're white. Mm-hmm. They have them for other reasons. Poor people have tons of issues in this country that are they are exploited and abused in so many ways and persecuted, but it's not because they're black. And things are, and if you're poor and black or poor and non-white, then it's worse for you often.
And can we just point out that, like, in talking about affirmative action or talking about how black folks are disadvantaged in our system, if your gut reaction is to say, but white people, that's an issue. And I'm not saying that because it's like, well, we should always just talk about black folks. I'd made a whole fucking movie about poor white folks and their legacy of radical action. So it has nothing to do with that. It's that if we can't talk about the systemic racism in this country without white people going, but also white people have it hard, we can't actually fucking talk about racism in this country. Yeah. We have to be able to sit in that discomfort and be comfortable in being uncomfortable. I get it. It's fucking uncomfortable to talk about race as a white person, knowing that we are privy to this white privilege. And again, white privilege does not mean that your life has been fucking easy. It means it has not been hard because of the color of your skin. That's all white privilege means. It does not mean that you got a fucking silver spoon or a golden spoon or whatever the fuck else kind of spoon. Maybe you didn't even get a spoon, okay? But you did not get a spoon because you're white. So that, and also I see some people pointing out, like, well, maybe it's just because the black people weren't as smart or good about whatever the fuck. Okay, that's dumb. Because here's the thing. two answers to that question. The first thing is that affirmative action does not mean we look at nothing but the person's race on the application. And it could be a carrot, but as long as they say that they're Black, we're getting them housing and we're getting them into all of the 101s. And no, that's not what it fucking means. Affirmative action means that race plays a role in the overall admissions process. Not that it is the role. It is a role. That's the first part. The second part is that, as Justice Jackson pointed out in her dissenting opinion, she wrote that as the district court found, because people have been bringing up that this disadvantages, for instance, Asian applicants, but as the district court found, a higher percentage of the most academically excellent in-state Black candidates were denied admission than similarly qualified white and Asian American applicants. So even with affirmative action at play, you still have Black applicants that are as academically excellent as she writes, being denied admission at a higher rate than white and Asian American applicants. So even affirmative action, which people are like, oh God, it's reverse racism, even that, as it stood before this Supreme Court decision, was not allowing academically excellent Black folks the same ability to get into college as white and, as she points out, Asian American applicants, because that was part of the argument. So looking at affirmative action like, oh my God, it's the only thing that matters in an application process. So if you're white, you couldn't possibly, that's fucking dumb. It is not at all accurate.
And looking at it as someone sends in an application and they're Black and they just put in a pile of, yep, Black, yep, Black, yep, Black. Like they don't even look at it. They're just like, it's a Black kid, he's in.
Right. So I just want to share some more from what she wrote in her dissenting opinion. And she shares about again, Jim Crow, sharecropping, and how these effects are cumulative. And she writes, in so excluding Black people, these government policies that she writes about, affirmatively operated, one could say affirmatively acted, to dole out preferences to those who, if nothing else, were not Black. Those past preferences carried forward and are reinforced today by the benefits that flow to homeowners and to the holders of other forms of capital that are hard to obtain unless one already has assets. So the redlining, the fact that sharecropping became a thing after slavery, the Great Migrations, Jim Crow, all of these barriers that were put in place so that Blacks could not own property, so that Blacks could not own land, so that they had to still be beholden to white landowners in order to earn a living. All of these things, and today, just like the numbers, the fact that Black wealth is at a microscopic level compared to that of white wealth, this all plays a role in even one's ability to apply to fucking college, much less get in. So she's saying that the affirmative action of the United States government throughout history has been to affirmatively act in ensuring that Black people do not have access to really any education, because it was also illegal to teach slaves how to read, but certainly any higher education. And that remains the case today. And so to say that even this little, like Lee put it, even this tiny rock being thrown into a tsunami, even just to say that that is too much, really all that proves is that our system is so white supremacist that any kind of barely scratching at equality for Black folks is considered an affront to white people, because in a white supremacist system, it is. And this is exactly what you see, like, for example, in Israel. Any kind of attempt to make Palestinian people equal to Israelis is considered anti-Semitism, because in an apartheid state that's based on being Jewish, it is an affront to that system.
And some of you have been making this point in the chat, which I wanted to make as well, which is the university system was set up in some manner to, yeah, I mean, yes, there are some people that get some good education, but it was set up in some manner in order to actually kind of wall off the managerial class from others getting up into that area. So if you create universities that only a select few, and it started out as very few, right? It was only male. It was largely only male from wealthy families. Now it's broadened, but it started as a way to get them educated in a certain way that would then allow them to be the managerial class, and they would get some of that education, but they'd also just have that degree, which was a piece of paper saying, hey, look, I'm part of the club. Now, then access to those universities grew and grew until you had even poor people taking out loans to go to university. And so more and more jobs started requiring that you had a degree just to even be able to apply. And so really, it seems that the ruling elite are realizing that university has not recently been serving enough to entrench the class system and to stop people from a lower class from rising up too easily. And so they're working in a variety of ways. One is making it overly expensive. Another is getting rid of affirmative action, which, like we've said, was just a Band-Aid on our racist system. They're working to kind of try and put those things back to how they were so that you don't have people rising up from a lower class into a higher class.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's so much that I could share, but I don't want to just like read her dissenting opinion because it's not really story time. But I will share this point that definitely goes against what Roberts was saying because he's a fucking idiot. She writes, quote, deeming race irrelevant in law does not make it so in life. And having so detached itself from this country's actual past and present experiences, the court has now been lured into interfering with the crucial work that UNC and other institutions of higher learning are trying to do to solve America's real world problems. Now, you can argue whether that's true or not, but no one benefits from ignorance. Although formal race-linked legal barriers are gone, race still matters to the lived experiences of all Americans in innumerable ways. And today's ruling makes things worse, not better. Ultimately, ignoring race just makes it matter more. And I think that is a very powerful point as well, because, you know, a lot of people will try to make the point, well, we just shouldn't pay attention to race and we shouldn't see race. And it's like, yeah, that sounds really nice and hippy dippy and whatever the fuck and, you know, sprout salady. But in the world that we live in, it's not helpful. Because we live in a racist system. So to say that you don't see it just means that you're not paying attention to the fact that it's fucking racist. It's kind of like saying, oh, well, you know, I just think that men and women are the same and we shouldn't pay it. And it's like, but we're not in society. So to pretend that patriarchy doesn't exist doesn't do us women any fucking favors. It just means that you're not going to pay attention to the fact that we are still second-class citizens compared to men. So it's like, we have to pay attention to this and then act accordingly so that perhaps somewhere down the road after the end of the American Empire, we could potentially get to the point where race does not matter, where we don't have to pay attention to it, where we don't have to pay attention to gender. Wouldn't that be fucking wonderful? But that's not the reality that we live in, and pretending that it is only hurts people in the here and now.
And here's a little positive to take away from this, and some of the other awful Supreme Court decisions. We're going to get to one or two of them here in a moment, but here's a little positive to think about: is affirmative action was not fixing our racist system. Our system continued to be incredibly racist and incredibly fucked up, and so yes, getting rid of it is worse, but only by a little degree. So it's one of these things that is, you know, it's kind of like, I'm that's a bad example. So I'll skip the example for a moment. But it doesn't. It's like it's a little bit of a similarity to the liberals agreeing to allow gay people into the military. It's like, yes, absolutely, that should be allowed, because what the fuck is wrong with you to give a shit whether someone's gay or not? But also, that does not fix our military nor our homophobic nation policies. It does not solve any of those problems. It doesn't solve our endless wars. It's like yes, do it, but if they were to say right now, okay, we're going back to banning gay people in the military, I wouldn't be like, oh shit, the wonderful utopia we had here in America is now gone. So to me, there is some similarity here where it is something that affirmative action is a small anti-racist policy that liberals put in place that has now been eliminated because they couldn't even bear having that, or this nation couldn't even bear having that.
Yeah.
This tiny little seed of anti-racism in our system.
Also, final note here, this ruling just struck down affirmative action. So for instance, legacy admissions, which means like, hey, my grandfather and my father and my whatever the fuck, my great-great-grandfather went to this school.
Which is so much of the admissions in Harvard and Columbia.
That's the only reason that George W. Bush went to fucking college. Let's be honest, folks. Legacy, that means that it's nepotism. It's your family went to this school, so therefore that's still allowed.
Yeah.
So you can put,
that's fine.
Like if you've ever applied to colleges, it'll ask you, like, has any family member ever gone to this college? So there you go.
And if you have a family member who is also a donor, a big donor,
that was my next point.
Then that's just like written across the top.
So if daddy donates a fucking new like football stadium or whatever the fuck, you're going to get in. And it's like, so that's allowed, but a person's lived experiences in a racist society are not allowed to be considered. Wow.
This reminds me of when they found out that these rich people had been lying about whether someone was in athletics in order to get them into university. Do you remember this scandal? It came out a few years ago. One of them was the woman from the mom from Full House. Her kids were part of it, where they lie, they write that they're on the crew team or whatever, and then they bring them into the university, and then they never go to the crew team. They've never done crew in their lives or whatever. And so during that time, what this reminds me of is Jay-Z posted like a photo of him and his daughter and said she got into, I don't remember the university, but she got into elite university. Stanford, I think. She got into Stanford all by herself with her own, acumen or whatever like that. And it turns out that not only has Jay-Z donated tons of money to Stanford, but Iovine, that's his partner in the Beats, and the Beats headsets, has a wing like named after him at Stanford. So you think
awkward.
You think like, it had nothing to do with the fact that your father and his business partner have like wings of the school named after them.
Well, yeah. So again, I tweeted out a link to Justice Jackson's dissenting opinion. I highly recommend that folks read it. And I'm not trying to like fangirl Justice Jackson. I know that everybody that's on the fucking Supreme Court got there because they support the American experiment as a heinous experiment.
Because you have proven to stand up for corporate America. And never at no point will you fight against that.
And if you read, like, there are several moments in her dissenting opinion where she's like, and the promise of what America, and I'm like, but she makes some fucking amazing points, and her historical snapshots of, again, like the cumulative harm that affirmative action could never hope to address. But that's a really powerful read. So I recommend that to folks.
All right. Let's move on to the next story. And in a few minutes, we'll be going to just rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as leecamp.net, my locals page. Those two will continue. It's free to watch at Rumble, by the way. But all right, let's get into how the Supreme Court has just killed Biden's so-called attempted student loan relief plan.
Dude, Supreme Court is
Well, they're garbage, but we also have made fun of this student loan relief plan because Biden did everything he could to drag his feet and make sure this didn't happen. And the amount that's been floated
kept going down,
going down. And they like at first it was going to be 50,000, then it was 20, then it was 10, then it was 10 if you apply and we accept you, and like it just.
Yeah,
they wanted this to be stopped.
In all of the articles that you read about this, there's always like this caveat. So Biden has promised to cancel up to $10,000 per, and I'm like, up to what the fuck? So you could get a letter that just says
we've eliminated $5. $5.
You're welcome. Vote Biden 2024. Like, what the fuck? Up to? I mean.
Also, maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but one of the most important things to remember about both this and the affirmative action decision is these are things that Biden has worked throughout his career to make worse for people. So the student loan relief thing was Biden trying to undo a little fraction of the harm that he has done by making sure that people who have student loan debt can never declare bankruptcy to get out of it, which was his bill, and he helped make sure it got through. And so you can declare bankruptcy on anything else. Trump can have $1 billion of debt and just declare bankruptcy and, wipe it off the books. You can declare bankruptcy for a ton of other things, but not for student loans, thanks to Joe Biden.
Biden can't even unfuck the situations that he created.
He's trying to.
That's the kind of president.
Now, let's be clear. He's not trying to fully unfuck anything he's done. He's trying to unfuck a fraction of what he's done in order to try and look like he gives a shit about the people. And he has failed to unfuck any of his fuckery. Then with affirmative action, he, of course, is one of the most racist politicians to ever live. He doubled the prison population. It's just incredibly racist and hypocritical laws against, anyone caught with drugs. His racist laws, like if you're found with cocaine, it means far less than if you're caught with crack, because that, when he did that at the time, that was considered more of a black drug, whereas cocaine was considered more of a white drug. So clearly don't
the 3-strike rule.
It's just incredibly racist shit. And so, affirmative action was slightly dealing with a tiny, tiny, tiny little fraction of his racism, but now that's gone. So.
Well, and I believe Biden has already pointed out that this is why we need to expand the Supreme Court, and he needs to be able to put more people in the Supreme Court. I'm like, yeah, let's have more fucking assholes deciding about our lack of democracy. That sounds awesome.
But there is,
but that's what the Democrats always do, right? They're like, vote for us because Supreme Court, and it's like, motherfucker, this was like the Supreme Court continuously just beats us in the face, and then you want us to be like, well, we are going to have to get more of that, so we should make sure that the Democrats are in office.
But they never actually do expand the Supreme Court or anything like that. They just kind of float it as like, oh, maybe we would one day. And there's nothing in our Constitution that says it has to be 9 people.
No.
And yet they're there in those dumb seats for their entire lives. It's also fucking stupid and anti-democratic. We don't elect any of them. Oh, it's the worst.
Which is also why there's nothing in place right now to address like what's going on with Clarence Thomas and what was the other one who was like went fishing with the guy
Alito.
Yeah, there's nothing in place to deal with that because the Supreme Court is inherently undemocratic. So there's nothing to be like, oh well, because you did that, you're
right.
out.
Oh, you're woefully corrupt. Oh well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
See you later. Yeah, so as we transition from the affirmative action story to this student loan story, I'd also just like to point out from Justice Jackson's, it felt a bit prophetic of her to write, Black Americans are about half as likely as their white counterparts in their late 20s to have college degrees. And because lower family income and wealth force students to borrow more, those Black students who do graduate college find themselves about $50,000 in debt, which is nearly twice as much as their white compatriots for undergraduate.
So again, there's racism involved.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, as we were saying, this does not mean white people don't have student debt. So it harms plenty of people on all sides. It's just that
That's just an important thing.
There's
to
also
note.
there's also a race aspect involved in this, which again goes with what I was saying about like this is these things are designed to try and put universities back out of reach of a lower class, and therefore try and further entrench the class structure in the United States.
Yeah.
Philip, thank you for your comment and your donation. Philip was saying, why aren't people talking about the fact that Obama had a chance to put an affirmative action justice on the court and failed to push that through? Yeah, I mean, it's the Democrats are horrible in a million ways, but one of them is that they have no backbone. They're weak as shit, because the truth is they come off as weak because most of what they're saying they don't even believe in, and they agree with Republicans on 80 to 90% of the structural issues of this country. So as Biden pretends to, I want to get rid of student loan debt. No, you don't. No, you don't.
No,
You've been funded by the banks throughout your entire career. So it's just something they say. And then, the $15 minimum wage was stopped by the parliamentarian in Congress because we got to do what the parliamentarian says. Who the fuck is the parliamentarian? Are you making up positions?
Making up positions so that so the Democrats can continue to lose and then be like, well, we're trying, so you have to keep voting for us.
We were gonna pass $15 minimum wage, but then the Earl of the Judiciary said that it's not allowed. The what? The what of the fuck? What? Jesus. They just make up positions, and then that person tells them, well, you can't. Oh, okay. All right, then. Toodaloo. I want to read some comments coming at leecamp.net where you can so some of you see leecamp.com on the screen. That's my regular website. The locals page where which is my community. It's how you support the show. All that stuff is you can just type in leecamp.net and it'll take you straight there. Anyway, Patchouli Diver says the Scrotist is the worstest.
The Scrotist.
Yeah, I call him Scrotus too.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Redreamer says, I absolutely love how the French are like, fuck you.
Me too.
Yes. Bridie 1132 says Yard Rock 3024 or whenever.
I don't think there'll be much left of the U.S. empire in 3024.
For those who have no idea what Bridie is talking about, I am the campaign manager for a massive and groundbreaking presidential election, which I'll show you right now, for a rock that I found on the street. It's a literal rock, grayish brown, so it's not white, and it's running for president. It's better than any of the candidates in the corporate two-party duopoly. Yeah, it's absolutely better than either of them. And I want you to check it out. It's at Yard Rock 2024, and yeah, I know some people are excited about RFK Jr., but he has said he will take money from billionaires, corporations, anyone who wants to give it to him.
He's also pro-Israel.
He's pro-Israel. He's pro-CIA, weirdly. And he says many of them are brave and wonderful folks. And Yard Rock has not said any of that. Okay? Yeah. Yard Rock has said none of that. Yard Rock has not taken $1 from corporate America. So anyway, when you get a chance, check out Yard Rock 2024. Also, there's a couple of pieces of merch there, including bumper stickers and oops, forgot that, but I forgot to go live on Rockfin. But anyway, however, all the 50% of all the merch proceeds go to erase medical debt across the United States. So if even like 2 people end up buying a bumper sticker, this rock will have eliminated more medical debt across America than Joe Biden. So,
I mean, God, I think if nothing else, this I can't, God damn it, Lee.
What'd I do?
I can't say it.
Little
rock. I keep saying little rock.
You don't have to say literal. You can say yard. You can say Yard Rock.
Literal is a stupid word. You get stuck at the back of your throat.
Not literal. Little rock.
Literal. Get stuck at the back of your throat.
Some people are talking about Black Rock. You need a Yard Rock to take on Black Rock.
That's true.
You do.
A literal rock. It really says a lot about our system that this rock could potentially, by just existing, do more for medical debt than Biden has in his long career.
Yeah. All right. So the rest of this is at rumble.com/Lee Camp. That's rumble.com/Lee Camp, as well as my locals page. Please join me over there, rumble.com/Lee Camp. We got more